Assalamu alaikum, hello and good afternoon. You are listening to Atiyah on the Mental Health and Emotional Wellbeing show on Ramadan Radio Wolverhampton and online on ramadanradiowolves.com. You can also find us on Facebook. In this show, we hope to provide information that might be helpful to support your well-being and the well-being of others, because everyone's mental health matters. You can listen back to this and previous shows on Ramadan Radio's YouTube channel, alongside finding further mental health information on my X feed at Atiyah3. We are not here to offer you advice in place of your clinician. However, we will share information that may encourage you to seek support. If you feel you need to discuss your health and well-being following this show, then please contact your GP or mental health professional. You are very welcome to send comments regarding the show via the WhatsApp messaging number on 07440 420 432. This mental health and emotional wellbeing show will be focusing on the journey to a happy marriage through the lens of Islam. Our guest today from Samina Ali Counselling is a psychotherapeutic counsellor using Islamic approaches to psychology and psychotherapy, specialising in adult counselling and marriage counselling. She has devised her own courses, such as premarital course called My Journey to You. She's provided many workshops on marriage, bereavement, Muslim parenting, amongst others. In this show, we look forward to hearing more about this and, in particular, how couples can navigate their marriage. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Ramadan Radio's Mental Health and Emotional Wellbeing show, Samina. Thank you for joining us.
Wa alaikum salam, Atiyah, and thank you for having me on.
It's a pleasure. So first of all, I think it might be helpful for our listeners to gauge a bit of an understanding of what led you to studying or working in mental health. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. I think when I was 17 years old, I had already figured out that I wanted to go into the field of counselling. And at that age, it was more to do with I wanted to become a child counsellor, not necessarily an adult counsellor. So already, because of the way my life had been, and the childhood I had, my father passed away when I was 6 years old. My mother had mental health issues all her life. I was one of 7 children. I was one of the youngest. I was number 6. So I already knew at that point that I definitely want to become a counsellor for children. However, it didn't quite pan out like that. Life took different directions. I became quite poorly through my studies. I then subsequently got married, had children raised soon after. And it wasn't until much, much later in about 2009, 2010, when my mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Now, because I had never, ever been able to connect with my mother because of her mental health issues, when she was diagnosed with cancer, she then moved in with me for 10 months until she passed away. In those 10 months, I realized I was able to connect with my mum in a way that I'd never, ever, ever been able to connect with her in her whole life. And I already knew that I was a good listener. I already knew that people would come to me for problems, but something changed that time. There was just something magical about that time that was the determining factor that, you know what, this is the route I'm going to take. And honestly, Atiyah, soon after my mother passed away, I enrolled and signed up to, my next journey into the field of counselling.
Right. Sounds like a very difficult experience, but at the same time, quite an enlightening one that led you to this field and to be able to give others the time. Thank you for that. Can you share a little bit about? I mean, I've read that you've done some work, community-based work, including workshops, which I mentioned earlier. Do you want to tell me a little bit about that? What got you into the community work? Tell me a bit about what you do in the community and what you offer.
So, just like you mentioned, Atiyah, I do offer a course so there's a premarital course called My Journey to You, which at the moment is running as an on-demand course. That's for people who are looking for a spouse, and it helps you navigate through all the challenges and hurdles that you will face, and actually gives you a reality check of the real journey of looking for a spouse, and not all about the wedding day that most people kind of focus on, especially now when it's such a like social media type of world. So that's one course. Then it's the Happy Couples course, which is specifically for couples who are married and the challenges that they face in marriage, how to become that happy couple, how to conflict manage, how to resolve issues, how to put love in the marriage. And then there's the Heartful Parenting course, which is for parents, and how they can be the parent for in this modern day with all the challenges in the modern day. I also have a bereavement course, which was initially created in the times of COVID when people were going through such difficult deaths and the way the deaths were happening and family members couldn't really get involved like they would want to, but it's now like subsequently being tweaked, so it's just general bereavement course. Apart from that, I'm a chair of governors at Eden Girls School in Slough. I do when other organisations approach me to say that could you do a course or could you do a workshop for us, I'm happy to design it accordingly to what they would like. Like recently, ISB campus in Birmingham wanted me to deliver a workshop or a segment of their workshop on friendships and the toxicity of friendships or just navigating through friendships. So yeah, these are some of the things that I do.
It's very interesting work. So with regards to your workshops, would you say that there's a background in Islamic principles, again, mentioned earlier, in terms of what you provide?
Absolutely. Every single workshop of mine has Islamic approaches to it. It's psychological and within the paradigm of Islam. I can't do it any other way, to be honest. It's a part of me. So yeah, it does.
Sounds like it's ingrained in a positive lens to psychology and your offer. Samina, coming to the topic in hand in terms of thinking about happy marriages and the Islamic approach to this. I mean, with the fast pace of life, as you mentioned earlier, and the prioritization, let's say, for some couples or most couples of children, there's not always time to think about the strengthening of marriage ties. At what point do you think that couples realise that they require support? At what point do they come and access your services or want to speak to you?
I think life has changed at the end. It's really interesting that people are coming more and more at their very early stages. I think people are just a lot more emotionally intelligent and they realize very, very soon that, look, we are unable to communicate, we're unable to resolve these issues. And we've got these themes of these patterns, these negative patterns that we are developing. I think we need to go to a professional. So the good thing is that, alhamdulillah, it's happening sooner and sooner. Rather than it coming to the end of what I call when your marriage is on a life support machine. So it's happening more and more soon, alhamdulillah. But I think generally couples, when you realize, look, when you are poorly, you've got a toothache, you've got back pain, or you've got this ongoing knee pain, at some point you're going to see a doctor because it's beyond you now. You've tried all your home remedies, you've tried everything at home, it's not working, you're going to go to a doctor. And I think the same principle should be applied in marriages. When you can see you have tried all your techniques and skills that you've got to resolve this pattern that's developing in this marriage, this negative toxic pattern, and it's not being resolved, then the best thing is to seek help rather than it building up and the marriage is just going to get poorly and poorly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, that's great news that people are approaching you quite early on. They're recognising that actually we require either an intervention of some sort or a conversation around, what we could do to strengthen our marriage, let's say.
Yeah.
Do you find it's mostly men or women who approach you?
I bet you think it will be mainly women who approach me. I get both. Mm-hmm. I actually get both, because sometimes people think that it's actually the women who would think of these things and she'll be the one. But then actually men are more, the way Allah has created a man, he's the one who's really problem solving, more solution focused. So I actually get a bit of both. I get the wives approaching me and I get the husbands approaching me. So I can't even say at the other, I get one more than the other. I actually get them both approaching me.
Right. And on odd occasions, do you get external people contacting you to find out more information so that they can pass it on to their loved ones, let's say?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah.
Right. Oh, so all the time. So that's more common than I thought.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. I actually, I do have people who say that, look, I have my sister-in-law or my brother, I'm
Mm.
speaking on behalf of them or some friends, and I just want to find out what kind of services do you offer because I feel it can really benefit them. So yeah, I do. I have external people approaching
Right.
on behalf of their loved ones. Yeah.
Brilliant. Samina, could you tell me whether you offer your services in different languages, whether that's workshops or individual therapy or couples therapy?
Yes, I do. So, not various languages, but yeah, I do offer Punjabi.
Yeah.
People have said that, look, do you do Patwari? I can't speak Patwari. I can speak just Punjabi. I can
Mm.
speak Urdu. So, if that's
Mhm.
needed, I definitely can offer that.
Mhm.
So, that's in terms of counseling. However,
Mm.
Atiyah, I'll share something else with you. Somebody once said to me that could you do um, it was it was podcast. That's it. It was podcast, and they had all these episodes, but they wanted it in Punjabi. Actually, they wanted it in Patwari. So I was very honest. I said, look, I can't speak Patwari, but I can speak proper like Sindhi Punjabi, basically,
Yeah.
like they call it. So that was probably one of the hardest things for me, Atiyah, to actually do all that psychological talk and
Absolutely.
convert it into Punjabi. I found it
Mm.
really challenging, but
Mm.
alhamdulillah, it was done. But yeah, I
Yeah.
do offer my services in Urdu and Punjabi as well. Yeah.
I can relate to that. I had a similar recording that I had to do again in Punjabi, but they were amazed by how many people were actually became quite informed. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that you're doing that. Right. So we've talked a little bit about kind of who accesses your services and how they come about your services and how that's done. And I think I like the idea of people from the outside of the couple recognizing there's something going on and wanting to support them and then coming armed with information about
Mm.
couples counselors such as yourself.
Mm.
Um, so, what are the themes and of the relational problems you come across? Let's say, what do people say that they're struggling with from the outset? They probably come with the one complaint or another, and I'm guessing that spans
Yeah.
into spins
Sure.
into lots of other areas. Go ahead.
Sure. I mean, I guess sometimes you would think that I'm going to come up with all this fancy stuff like infidelity or someone's cheating, and that's like the themes of the marriage. But that's not actually the kind of themes I come across. The kind of the most common theme and an ongoing theme for years that I face in marriages is communication.
Hmm.
Honestly, it's as simple. They don't present it like that. So like when you go to the doctor, Atiyah, you will come to the doctor and say, "Look, I've got this cough, and it's lingering, and I don't know what it is." But then the doctor diagnoses it that actually you've got a chest infection. The cough is just a symptom of the chest infection. So exactly the same with myself. When the couple come, they come with different symptoms. She doesn't hear me out. He's too harsh. She doesn't listen to me. He's abusive or she's abusive, but the actual root cause or the actual disease, so they are the symptoms. The actual problem in the marriage is communication.
Hmm.
People don't know how to communicate, and I think people think communication is just talking and expressing yourself, but it goes beyond that. Communication is more listening, in my opinion, in a marriage than actually talking, because most of the time people don't listen, and even if they do listen, they're listening to react or respond or counteract or get their defenses will go up. They very rarely understand the proper way of listening, which I have to teach them, and that is putting your agenda aside, stepping into the other person's world, like facing the person firstly, like the prophetic way, how the Prophet ﷺ will listen to the person, facing them heart to heart, doing the gestures of listening and actually listening. But then we go a little bit further where I get them to paraphrase and repeat, so the person speaking is actually feels like they're being heard. So the common theme, coming back to the common theme, seriously, is communication.
Right, so that's one of the main things that you come across, and you would probably say the root cause for a lot of issues that
Oh,
is
absolutely.
represented.
Exactly how you said it. Yes, the root cause for a lot of issues in the marriage, and they think that's actually the problem in the marriage that they come with. When we go to the root cause, is usually communication.
And that is interesting, isn't it? That people don't quite often recognise what might have led them to the issue that they're presenting with.
Mm, mm.
How difficult do you find opening up that conversation sometimes?
As in the conversation of what the root cause is, or just
Yeah,
conversation?
recognizing that there's more to this. There's something that's brought them here, and trying to understand this story. I think what you've mentioned there is the kind of acting, listening, and safe space that you're providing for them. But
Yeah.
I'm guessing that there's going to be some resistance, perhaps from one of the couple, or yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So from my side, first of all, I don't hesitate. I'm very straight up. I'm as gentle as I can be. I firstly identify the temperament of the couple individually. What are their temperaments? So I know how to communicate to them. You
Right.
cannot communicate. And again, this is a prophetic way. The Prophet ﷺ wouldn't speak exactly the same to every single person. He'll come to their level. So it's one of the first things and alhamdulillah, obviously I've studied, I forgot to mention that, 2 years of Unani medicine. So I've got to understand the temperaments of people and how to identify that as well. So I identify their temperament, but I don't hesitate at all to point out exactly what's going on. I do not hesitate, and my clients are very used to it. I don't, I don't even bat an eyelid of calling out exactly what the problem is, and calling people out in the sessions as well, as politely and as nicely and as sensitively as I can. But I do call them out saying, guys, and I guess this is the role of the professional, where they are. So just like the doctor, I've got this, doctor, I've got that wrong, I've got this, and the doctor saying, listen, I think what really may be going on is this underneath. So I'll say, can you see by what you're saying? I can see that you're not listening, and you're talking really loud. Maybe that's because you're not feeling heard. So I will mirror back to them exactly what they can't see is going on. And I'm reading between the lines all the time and telling them as well and keeping them informed. Some things I may hold back. Again, that's wisdom in it, to tell them at the right time when they're ready to listen. They're not always ready to listen to it all at the beginning.
Sure. I think what you mentioned there is very interesting in terms of the recognition and leading to that, the conversations that lead to that recognition, and the subtlety around that. Samina, you mentioned then Unani medicine. Tell me a bit about that. I've not heard of that before.
So Unani medicine is so I studied 2 years under Hakim Shahid Buhari in Kutum College. It was actually a 3-year course, and then you can become a Unani practitioner, so you're a naturopath. But within that is Ibn Sina's temperaments, which are really important in Unani medicine in determining the disease and the lifestyle of the actual patient. But I actually went into it really for the first year just to understand temperament, so I could use it for in my counselling field. But I found it so interesting, I did another year. And then I was supposed to complete a final year, but then I realised I would only be completing the final year if I actually wanted to go into Unani medicine. And I think I took everything I needed from it in the 2 years. It was a big eye-opener, just understanding Ibn Sina's 4 temperaments and seeing that play out in a marriage. I mean, subhanAllah, it's like I've got this extra lens now that I never had before.
Sounds very interesting. I think.
Yeah, it's a whole new topic, honestly. It's a whole big new topic, to be honest.
Fantastic. You've mentioned some of the themes that come across and the root causes. Just widening the lens for a second, and then perhaps coming back to that. What's the role of the family in all of this? I mean, you hear in the grapevine or in the community or in my field of work, our field of work, about the role of family in relationships, the wider family. How much of that is brought into your sessions?
Do you mean a wider family, as in siblings, parents, or the home you grew up in? Because I can look at this in very many different dimensions.
Well, let's start with upbringing. Then let's have a little think about siblings and upbringing in that environment, and then
Sure.
perhaps move on to in-laws and wider friends or other
Sure,
families.
sure. So I guess on a general note, I think the role of the family is to be there as a support system, love, guidance, a safe space. Ideally, that's how we would want the role of the family to be like. So, I mean, I always say if we look at upbringing and childhood, a child's nervous system is developed in their childhood home and the people they are around. So how they are able to regulate themselves starts at a very young age. And it's at that point that can determine the rest of their life. The reason why, I don't know if you noticed that there's a theme in all my courses. So there's parenting. Why? Because I identified a lot of the issues in people's marriages started from their childhood. Then I realized a lot of issues in the marriage could have been prevented with a premarital course, and if they knew how to navigate this. And then I identified that if they already are now in the marriage, we need to have a marital course to actually help them through that. So can you see there's a connection between all of them? But the role of the family, by far, maybe I'll generalize it, should be as that support system, that non-judgmental environment, that place of nasiha, a healthy nasiha, the place of love, and it should be a safe space. I'm saying should because it's not. It's not always like that. Most, not most, a lot of people come from very toxic families, sadly.
And this toxicity, is it brought in individually? Do you speak to couples individually and think about kind of the early childhood experiences? Or is it brought into the room as a couple? Or both?
So when I do my consultation for couples counseling, I have a three-way consultation system. So what I do is I have an individual hour with the husband, I have an individual hour with the wife, and then we go into the joint consultation together. So I gain their individual histories first. And part of that is their background, their upbringing. And, sometimes it is at the other, one person has a toxic background and the other one doesn't. Sometimes it is that they both have a toxic background, but different levels of toxicity or even trauma. It's not always toxic. It can be trauma or, I don't know, being brought up by a single parent. There's lots of different reasons that can then, for sure, impacts the marriage.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm just thinking a little bit about the difficulties around then kind of thinking about the number of sessions it will take to work with couples. From the outset, do you have like an average number of sessions that you would inform clients about or couples about? Would you say, let's say on average, I work X amount of sessions, but it might be that we need a number of sessions? Do you ever have that conversation? And if you could answer that quite precisely, just because we're leading to the break now, and we'll pick up afterwards.
Sure. So at the beginning, Atiyah, I used to be quite precise and say, I think we're going to need this many sessions and maybe more. Now I am very frank, and because of the experience in the field, I am very honest and just say, I tell them how it will be, because we start off with weekly, then we move on to fortnightly, 3 weekly, and then monthly check-ins. But I say to them, I don't know how that will be, how long it will take. We will just see what comes out.
Sure. Thank you very much. This half of the conversation has been very interesting, and I'm sure our listeners would want to hear more on the other side. We'll see you shortly, just after a short break. Thank you very much for your time thus far, Samina. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the Mental Health and Emotional Wellbeing Show on Ramadan Radio, Wolverhampton Wolves. Samina, before the break, you told us a little bit about kind of early childhood experiences and the impact on individuals and thus the impact on the relationships between a couple. I'm wondering, for the second part of, I suppose, this conversation is thinking about wider family members and the impact that they could have. Could you please share a bit about that?
Sure. I think I just want to add one more thing about just childhood, because the childhood topic is a really big topic generally. But if you do have things in your childhood, I mean, like I did for sure, and it's not resolved, it will go into the marriage. The reason why on my premarital course, I advise everybody to seek some form of counseling to deal with, even if it's a short time of trauma, short time of loss, grief, sad time, anything you went through, just to be able to deal with it, because it would play out in the marriage. Okay, so I just wanted to put that out there. But with other, was it the role of other people, other family members?
Yeah, so if we think about the couple as an isolated kind of entity, it's actually not the case, is it? There's going to be impact from people around them, influences, let's say. Yeah, can you tell us a bit about that? How is that brought into your sessions, and is there quite extreme examples that you come across, unfortunately?
Yeah, so there are some extreme examples, and sometimes there's a theme as well, and theme in certain cultures as well, because I have all kinds of cultural backgrounds in my counselling sessions. So there is this, so a couple of themes I can say is that, okay, so both sides of the families matter. The husband side, the wife side of family matter. There needs to be a healthy division in how we give in our marriages the time to both sides of the couple. So the husband and wife need to decide. So we're broken three ways now, in the sense that, or we divided three ways now. So we need our time, and this is the balance people don't get right. We need to make sure we've got our time. We need to make sure that the wife is able to see her family, and the husband is also able to see their family, and obviously see each other's family as well. So there needs to be this healthy kind of division. But within that, there is lots of other nuances and complications that can happen, because there can also be where one, maybe the husband side or the wife side, can be very involved in the marriage. Like they're always on the phone. They always need to know everything. They always need to have a say. And I don't think that's healthy. I don't think anybody needs to have a say in anybody's marriages. The couple need to be the gatekeepers of their marriage, and they need to ring fence and make sure that they are the ones who, people can say what they want, but we need to be the deciding factors of how we will live our marital life. So there's good nasiha. I always am really, really up for good nasiha. I think that's really, really good advice, good counsel, really good. But I think there are times when family members feel that they are part of this marriage. Now, I do, and this is no disrespect to any cultural background, but I do notice, like in the Bengali culture, there is a lot of involvement from the girl's family in the girl's life, and that doesn't always sit very well with the husband. So every culture has their own kind of theme that I notice. While if I just go into the Pakistani background, I don't see it as much. So when I see the Pakistani couples, I don't see that as much, where they so involved. There could be other kind of toxic traits, but there isn't. To be honest, I think the Pakistani family is more like they are more. The husband's family seems to be more involved. So can you see different cultures? There seems to be different themes there.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it, in terms of what plays out in families. How do you tend to navigate those difficult conversations? I mean, is it brought to you by the other, or is it that coming out in individual sessions?
So it's usually brought in the couple session, but by the other. So the one who's on the receiving end of how her family is too involved or his family is too involved is usually brought by the other. So it's a difficult conversation, because I have to be very sensitive, especially when the person whose family is, they don't see it like that. So I have to really break it down for them to say, can you see how this is making the other person feel? And just going back to the basics, I sometimes have to teach them the basics are how much family should be involved, and where there should be healthy boundaries, and how boundaries are really good in Islam and they're very healthy. So it's very individualistic. It's not like this general, not general. It's not like I've got this. Well, yeah, I think generally it's not like I've got this generalized way of dealing with it. Every couple is very different. Like I said, I have to look at their temperaments, I have to look at their individual story, I have to look at how this is playing out, I have to look at, there's so many nuances at the other I have to look at. But I won't let it go, in the sense that we will definitely address it, and it has to be addressed, that's for sure, regardless of how sensitive somebody is.
So it sounds like there's no stone left unturned.
No, never. Not in my sessions anyway.
Well, yeah, and just hearing that sounds a bit kind of a bit nerve wracking. How would you encourage people to then think that actually the outcome of these conversations is actually a positive one?
Oh, it can take a few sessions sometimes. I need to sometimes say to them, look, it's okay. You can go away and think about this. I can see how. So the one who, for example, it's the husband's family who's getting too involved with the marriage and the wife is feeling she doesn't like it. So if I'm counseling the husband in the couples session and telling him, look, can you see how this makes her feel? I'm also very sensitive towards him and say, look, have a think about it. We can touch on this next session. I can see how this may seem to you. So it's a journey.
Sure.
It's a journey. It's not something like, sorry, tick box, done this session. We're not bringing this up again. You just need to go and sort it out. Never. So I'm happy to be on that journey for as long as it takes. I think that's one thing, going back to one of your questions towards the end of the first half of the segment, was that how long do I tell them? The reason why I don't tell clients how long, I just tell them my method, which is we start off weekly sessions in couples counseling. That is to build the momentum and build habit and consistency. And it's that accountability. And then when we get to a certain point, we very quickly can move on to 2 weekly sessions. And then 3 weekly. By the time we're on 3 weekly, we've gone on to like an hour session, because couple sessions are an hour and a half. By the time we've transitioned between 2 weekly to 3 weekly, we've moved down to an hour. And when we move between 3 weekly to a monthly check-in, we've moved down to half an hour check-in. So just before you, I had a couple who were on their half an hour check-in. I think they checked in after 6 weeks. 6 weeks they checked in. So they're still on their half, and this was their last check-in. So that's how I work, but no stone gets left unturned, and I make that very clear. Everything will be addressed.
I mean, that sounds very accessible, actually, the way you've shared it there, in terms of the number of sessions, the length of the sessions, and then and actually the gap within the sessions. So sounds very accessible. Just coming back to the role of the family and thinking a little bit about the resistance or the reluctance of individuals, I think there might be thoughts around, well, if this topic is brought up, will it then mean that I have to have difficult conversations with my family? Do you think that that's something that arises, that there's that thought? And how do you address it?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my God, it does. It's like the person on the receiving end now is the person whose family it is. It does feel like, okay, like, how do I go about this? So I'm always open to. It's not like, sorry, you've got to go and do it. Go and do the work. Never like that. It's like, is this something you can do? So I'm really on board with them. Is this easy for you? Like, and also we have to be sensitive. Like, if it's elderly parents, I'm not going to say, sorry, you just need to tell parents they need to understand. It's like, no, listen, we have to respect that your parents are elderly. They're not going to take this very well. So having this conversation is going to be pointless. You're probably going to break their hearts. How about you set boundaries by doing this differently and doing that differently? Can you see, Atiyah, that it's so individualistic? I have to be so sensitive of family members and making sure that in the process of fixing this marriage, we're not actually breaking other ties. To be real, I have to keep all that in my mind when we're doing this work.
Yeah, absolutely understanding the kind of intrinsic difficult conversations that you would be having, and thinking about kind of how that's addressed, but also how you engage those couples and individuals. I suppose some of these difficult conversations will encourage thought around, what is my role in this relationship, and what is my role in the conversation with my family members, whether that's difficult or not, or initially just thinking about those conversations and not saying them out loud. So I can recognise why people would feel a bit uncomfortable, but at the same time recognise why it's so important to address. You mentioned there things around the themes that come up for different cultures, and primarily a comparison was between or around Bengali and Pakistani communities. I'm just thinking a little bit about these cultural expectations and the Islamic principles of marriage. I think sometimes those boundaries or those lines are blurred, aren't they? Can you share some information around that or what you've experienced?
Sure. So the Islamic principles of marriage are there as a guideline. They are there, they don't change. That's like the whole body of this marriage. But at the same time, I'm all for the culture. Like, I don't feel that people need to give up their culture for their religion. I think it's just having a healthy balance between culture and religion, and making sure that the culture doesn't override the religion. I think, honestly, sometimes people think, sorry, we don't do anything culture, it's all about religion. There is nothing wrong with having the culture there. So there's culture within culture. There's one culture which is like, I'm from this background, this is my culture, this is how we eat, this is how we do things. But there's another culture within that, which is a family culture. As a family, this is how we do things. As a family, this is how we do things. So, and there's also when there is a couple where they are from different backgrounds. So I get a lot of that. Two individuals together, they come from complete different backgrounds. Their culture is not the same. So I think just having a good balance between the Islamic principles can't change. The roles and responsibilities of the wife or the husband cannot change. But within there is this own culture. So, for example, I'll give you a really good example. Husband's supposed to be the breadwinner. Wife's money is her money. Something very simple like that. Right now, the way the kind of times we're living in, it's very hard to be surviving on one income. So if the husband and wife are both okay with, look, we both are going to support this marriage financially and we're okay with that. So you've overridden the Islamic principle, but it's okay because you haven't broken, it's not at somebody's detriment. You're not forcing the wife, sorry, you have to work, I'm taking your haq or your right away from you. Both parties have mutually agreed that in our situation, this is the best thing for us. So having a good balance between it is really good, but the Islamic principles cannot change.
Yeah. Do you have any information around some of those Islamic principles? So,
I mean, it's the general roles and responsibilities of husband and wife in a marriage. So knowing, just reading on them and understanding what are the roles and responsibilities of each, making sure we are doing that within my culture or the culture as a husband and wife that we're developing. Just like I said, wife isn't obliged to work. Husband has to provide for her, right? But if they are deciding that we are okay with that, that's fine. As long as he never says it's your fight now, it's your duty to be doing this. So again, that's the Islamic principle. You can't say that, you can't change that. But they developed a culture of where we both are okay with, we're both bringing in this joint income into the marriage and we're happy with that. And at any point, if the wife decides to pull out, making sure that she's not shamed for that then, because that's the Islamic right.
Right. Okay. So it's kind of bringing in people to the Islamic principles of marriage and reminding them that some cultural expectations are kind of veering off that path, right? Coming on to a slightly different topic, which is just having a little think about how arguments, communication, negative communication between couples and perhaps wider family, how that has an impact on the family unit. So we're thinking about children in particular. Why is it important for people to have couples therapy?
Sure. So do you remember when I said that the nervous system of a child actually develops in the home of their upbringing, home around their parents, their nervous system is being developed. So if they can see that mum and dad are always fighting, and honestly, my parenting course covers all this. If they can see mum and dad always fighting, there's no result, there's constant arguments, we're walking on eggshells, you can see how that this child doesn't know how to regulate themselves. They already have now developed a dysregulated nervous system, which subsequently will lead to illness as well. So I'm not saying that couples shouldn't have arguments. I think it would be absolutely wrong for me to say you don't have arguments, fights. It's a very healthy part of marriage, but it's the way to do it. They don't need to be in front of the children, and sometimes couples even involve the children in it, and the child then becomes like, should I stick up for mum now? Should I stick up for dad? But then I don't want to upset dad, but I don't want to upset mum. I mean, the poor child suffers in the process. So knowing that you are the role model for your child, if the couple can understand we are the role model for our child or children, if we can develop a healthy nervous system in the home where we can, if we've accidentally had an argument in front of the children, then maybe we should teach the children how to also resolve that. Because what happens at the is I've seen when I notice in individual clients or even in couples where somebody doesn't know how to resolve a problem or they are avoiders, I usually ask about their childhood. And you notice that they are mirroring their childhood. They usually have seen a parent fight and with no resolve. So they've never understood how to resolve because they've only seen fight, 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 right? So either they'll become an avoider or they just don't know how to problem solve. My advice to parents is if you are going to have arguments in front of your children, then you need to teach also, what you also need to have in front of the children is how you come back from those arguments and how you resolve them, because then they also need that part. Otherwise, they will grow up just knowing how to fight and how to argue or avoid, but they never will understand how to resolve. So the whole environment that child is growing up in is very important for how they then will be in their future relationships. It starts in the home.
Absolutely. I mean, you've shared there a little bit about the impact on children hearing arguments and in particular perhaps encouraging anxiety for them and the way they relate to others. And I think that's important, isn't it? Like, as you say, the whole cycle needs to be addressed at different points. Can you think a little bit about the impact or the fallouts that have led to kind of an adverse reaction from the child? Have people brought in examples of that? So, for example, they've gone on to bully people at school or withdraw, or, there's been some...
Many times where the child has learned to swear, the child presents as passive aggressive, they have become the bully at school, they have become very withdrawn, they are very anxious all the time, and one of the most important factors is really good to know they have eating disorders.
Right.
So yeah, there's, and I'm sure that's not an exhaustive list up there. That's just a few that I've mentioned there.
Yeah. So they can be kind of detrimental impact on children in terms of their own health and well-being. Not just kind of understanding marriage and relationships, but actually wider than that. Now, do you sometimes advise parents on how let's say older children could help and support their relationship? I mean, I know it's not the older child's role to do that, but I'm just thinking of some examples that might come up. Can you share a little bit around that?
Sure. I mean, I guess by taking the burden of the marriage could be delegation of even duties, maybe like can you involve in the older children in, for example, cooking meals, having one evening where you can cook the meal. So it takes the burden off, if there's a burden on the marriage, oh my God, I've got to cook a meal, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. And also if there is, for example, mum is the go-to person, which most of the time it is. Mum is the go-to person for everything. Then mum to encourage, listen, why don't you also, can you see these kind of expertise are more your dad's expertise? Why don't you discuss these matters with your dad? I'm more than happy to discuss these. And teaching the child, look, this is really healthy. Then everybody's chipping in. And also with chores, other than, I know I mentioned cooking, but other than cooking, household chores, getting the older children involved, and even younger ones, in tidying up the house, cleaning the house, because that all these things can add up and put a burden and pressure on the marriage.
Sure. I mean, I think that's really key, isn't it? It's not only demonstrating kind of delegation and sharing chores, but also recognizing that it can alleviate stress within the couple. So would you have that open conversation around, should the couple be having that open conversation around children where they think about, well, if it's this issue, could you speak to dad about this? And, let's have a little bit of a family conversation around how we can support each other in what's going on a daily basis.
Yeah, I really encourage that because I think it's, especially when the children are at a good age, where they are ready to have these kind of conversations, because you're teaching children, here's a problem and let's think of a resolve. So there's no shame. I think parents sometimes feel we have to have it all together and we need to present ourselves as if we've got it all going for us. There's no shame in parents saying, listen, let's sit down. And I've noticed, I mean, I do it with my own children. You know, even I mean, my children have grown up. I sit with them and say, listen, guys, like, I've got a real stressful week coming up, and I'm going to need you guys to do this and you to do this. And I think that's the way we're going to manage this time. So when we have these stressful periods, and it's usually because of my work, I will get the family together and just say, right, this week or these couple of weeks are going to be like this. I'm going to need everybody to chip in. I need you to do this. I'll need you to probably do this. And, you know, so everybody knows what's going on. And again, Atiyah, it goes back to the nervous system of the house is regulated. Everybody knows they're stressed because there's this stressful time, but you're also saying that, okay, this is how we're going to manage this stressful time. So you're also teaching children how to look for solutions and how to sit there and communicate. And also that there's no shame in saying there's a stressful time coming up. I'm feeling overwhelmed. Can we all delegate? Can I delegate duties? Can me and my husband delegate duties? So we've all taken a role on this. So it doesn't just burden one person or just the couple in the marriage. I think these are really good, healthy conversations to have.
And I think one thing that we haven't come across, or we haven't talked about, sorry, within this conversation is around gender bias and starting from a young age. I think you're talking about roles and responsibilities, and I'm pretty sure you're talking about male, female, teenagers, all kind of having their role, because then that plays out as adults, doesn't it?
Of course, of course. And I don't think there should be gender specific roles. I think there should be gender specific care, right? So it's two different things. So what I mean is that I think everybody in the house, girls or boys, should be taught you can cook, you can unload the dishwasher, you can wash the dishes, you can lay the table, you can hoover, you can clean. I think that should just be general. It should never be gender specific. But gender specific care is nice where, listen, you're the older brother, be nice to your sister. Look, she's feeling really tired. You know, it's her time of the month. Why don't you just empty the bin for her today? That is nice.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. That's key. And recognizing other people's emotional well-being within the family, and that
Yeah.
those conversations being had openly, it's important. Samina, we are coming to the end of the session, and quite rapidly. And this conversation has been very interesting and informative. What I did want to talk about is finding some time to think about a potential spouse. But I'm thinking, let's invite you back next year and have a full conversation around supporting you
Inshallah.
in finding a spouse, and your kind of insight on that.
Inshallah.
Jazakallah for your time. I'm sure that our listeners have really appreciated your time. Um, Thank you again. Could you just provide your contact details quickly, if that's okay?
Sure. So my website is sminaali.co.uk. You can find me on Instagram, Samina Ali Counselling. Yeah, that's it.
Brilliant. So thank you for tuning in today. You'll hear me at the early with our next guest on Saturday at 1 p.m. Stay tuned.